Good afternoon, Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania, and welcome to Tea Party Patriots Action's Only Citizens Vote bus tour. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Jenny Beth Martin with Tea Party Patriots Action, and we have been doing this bus tour for the last 2.5 weeks. We started in Southern California, and we went all the way across the southern part of the country, ending in North Carolina last Friday. Then over the weekend, the bus driver drove the bus up to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thankfully, my team and I got to fly home briefly, and then we flew up to Wisconsin and began again on Monday. And we've gone from Wisconsin to here, and then we are going over to Harrisburg tomorrow, Annapolis on Monday, and then on Wednesday, we will be in Washington, D.C., finishing up the tour. And we are doing this because we want to see the SAVE Act passed into law. And the SAVE Act is a pretty simple bill. It requires proof of citizenship to register to vote. And over 80% of Americans agree with us on this issue. They want only American citizens voting in American elections for president, Senate, and Congress. The reason that we need to do this is really to clean up a loophole in the National Voter Registration Act law. And that law is something that we often refer to as the motor voter law. It's the law that allows us to register to vote at driver's license offices. And right now, when you do that, there is a form that stems from that law to register to vote, and that form has a simple checkbox on it that says that you are affirming you are a citizen, but it doesn't have any proof that you are a citizen. So it's possible to check the box, or whether deliberately or accidentally, just because you're filling out a government form and you think you need to check everything, and get added to the voter rolls if you are not a citizen. Also, there is a requirement that states accept that voter registration form, even if the state has their own requirement for proof of citizenship. So in the state of Arizona, I learned about the problem I'm about to describe to you a few years ago, and it's really what got me interested in trying to get this law corrected. The state of Arizona requires proof of citizenship to register to vote. And when you give that proof of citizenship, you are able to get a ballot that has president, vice president, Senate, Congress, then governor, lieutenant governor, and all the way down to their most local level of office, school board, or whatever their most local level of office is. They were sued over having this requirement, and their case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And a little over a decade ago, the Supreme Court ruled that they must accept the form from the motor voter law. So now, because they have to accept that form that does not require proof of citizenship, if you show proof of citizenship, you get the full ballot. If, however, in that border state, you do not show proof of citizenship, then you still get a ballot. And that ballot is called the federal-only ballot. It has President, U.S. Senate, and Congress on it. So if you have not shown proof of citizenship in Arizona, you still can vote for president in a state that is a swing state when it comes to our electoral college right now, Congress, and Senate. And I thought this was so messed up, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I learned it's because of the form and the Supreme Court ruling. And last year, working on a phone call with Cleta Mitchell, and Senator Mike Lee was on the call. Cleta Mitchell is from the Election Integrity Network. She was mentioning the problem. I reached out to Senator Lee, and I said, can we get a bill to correct this? And we started working on that, and we got the bill written. Senator Lee, Congressman Chip Roy from Texas, and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson introduced the bill. Last year, on the steps of the Capitol, they did a press conference. Rosemary Jinks, who's going to be speaking in a minute, was there with us, along with Cleta Mitchell, Stephen Miller, who's now in the White House, and we got the bill voted on and through the House of Representatives last year. It also went through the House of Representatives this year, but the Senate has not yet taken it up. So our goal is to get the Senate to take it up, either as a standalone bill or attaching it to something called must-pass legislation. And must-pass legislation is the kind of legislation that we will be voting on, or Congress will be voting on in the coming weeks, because we're about to hit the end of a fiscal year. And the new fiscal year for the United States government begins on October 1st. And members of Congress will vote on those bills that are either appropriation bills or continuing resolutions to keep the funding going. So perhaps we can get it attached to a bill like that. I would love that. But if we cannot get it attached to it right now, we need to have a standalone vote. And if we cannot get it through a standalone vote, then we can try another piece of must-pass legislation, like, that must be your friend. There we go. He told me his friend was coming in a big red truck. Then we can try with another bill like the National Defense Authorization or something else. The point is, we need to keep working until we get this bill passed. It's something that over 80% of Americans agree on, and it's something that over 75% of Democrats, over 75% of independents agree on. We need to get it done. So that's why we're doing this. And while you signed in, we had you sign a petition. We'll be delivering those petitions to Capitol Hill next week on Wednesday while we're there. And we hope you'll be able to come and join us there. Often when we do events in Washington, D.C., we have a lot of people from PA coming. So I hope some of you will consider joining us there. And now you're going to hear from a few of our coalition partners to learn more about the bill and why they are involved. And then you're going to hear from Marissa Hamilton, and I'll introduce her, and she'll go through calls to action. So our coalition partners include Cleta Mitchell's Election Integrity Network. We also have the State Freedom Caucus Network and the Election Transparency Initiative. Those groups are not here today, but we do have joining us Josh Finley from the Texas Public Policy Foundation and Rosemary Jinks from the Immigration Accountability Project. And now we are going to hear first from Rosemary, and then we'll hear from Josh. So come on up. And by the way, the Immigration Accountability Project, you may not have heard of it yet, but last year when we had members of the Senate trying to push through another amnesty bill and to codify all the bad stuff President Biden was doing with the border. She had a tweet talking about, and her group had a tweet talking about how it would allow how many people? 2,000 people a day? 4,000 people a day illegally into the country, and it would have codified it. Laura Ingraham picked up on it. Other people picked up on it, and she and her group helped prevent that bill from passing. So she has over the years, stopped amnesty so many times. So thank you so much for being here, Rosemary.
Thank you so much, Jenny Beth. And as Jenny Beth said, I'm a co-founder of the Immigration Accountability Project. We do only immigration all the time, and so our involvement in this effort is the non-citizen part of it. And I want to thank Jenny Beth and Tea Party Patriots Action. Jenny Beth and her team have been absolutely tireless on this issue and in this bus tour. I mean, just think about driving a bus across the country, up and down and all around, every day, 5 days a week. It's been insane for them. So God bless Jenny Beth for this. The reason that I am involved in this is because right now we have the highest foreign-born population that our country has ever had, including at the turn of the last century during the Great Wave of immigration. So we currently, as of January of this year, we had over 53 million non-citizens, foreign-born in this country, and that's about 15.8% of the population. Again, the highest share of the population that we have ever had in our history. Less than half of those 53 plus million have naturalized. So, of course, a naturalized citizen is eligible to vote in the United States. We agree with that. You know, once you have earned the right to naturalize, you've earned the right to vote in our elections. But more than half of those foreign-born have not become citizens. And the problem is that we issue driver's licenses to non-citizens, including the Real ID. So the Real ID, a lot of people think, will tell you if you're an American citizen or not. It does not. We issued Real IDs to lawful permanent residents, asylum seekers, parolees, and remember the Biden administration thoroughly abused the parole program to let in illegal aliens and give them driver's licenses. But here's the other catch. Every non-citizen who is entitled to work in the United States, whether legally or quasi-legally under the Biden administration, gets a Social Security number. With a Social Security number and a driver's license, you can register to vote. Those are the two pieces of identification that we require to register to vote. And if you go, as Jenny Beth said, with the motor voter law, if you go into a DMV and you're a brand new immigrant to our shores, you probably don't speak English. They hand you the form that has a little checkbox and a little place for your signature, and the person behind the counter says, just check that box and sign your name. They have no idea what they're signing. They can't read it. So because false claims to citizenship, which that is, and voting illegally are felonies under our law, making these people inadmissible to stay and ineligible for naturalization, we're basically entrapping them. We're basically saying, we're going to fool you into registering to vote. And then, by the way, if you have mail-in ballots, we're going to mail you a ballot so you can fill it out and sign it and send it in, never knowing that you are committing a felony. That's just wrong. There are, of course, non-citizens who intentionally vote illegally, who intentionally register to vote illegally. That all needs to stop. So, it is the really about the only remaining right that U.S. citizens have that distinguishes us from everybody else in our country is the right to vote. We get to decide the future of our country, not foreign nationals, not illegal aliens. We do. It's our right, and we need to take that right back. We need to get the SAVE Act passed, and we need to force the Senate to vote on it. And you know what? Even if the Senate can't pass it, even if the Democrats won't vote for it, let's get them on the record. Let's get them on the record voting against an 80-plus issue. It's time. John Thune can put this on the floor anytime he wants to. Now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. And now we're going to hear from Josh Finley from the Texas Public Policy Foundation.
Thank you. I'm Josh Findlay with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I direct the Election Protection Project over there. And Congressman Chip Roy, who is the author and one of the sponsors of this bill, like Jenny Beth mentioned, is an alumnus of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. So we are fully in support of only citizens voting. And I've got to thank Jenny Beth, the Tea Party Patriots, her incredible staff, and everyone who has come out from California to Pennsylvania to the Carolinas to show Washington, D.C., that only citizens should be voting in our elections. And this is a policy that just about everybody supports. On the bus, it says 80%. But I think in reality, if you look at polling, this is about an 87% issue across the board. Republican, Democrat, everybody believes that only citizens should be voting in our elections. And Rosemary just went through this. She talked a lot about how only citizens voting is closely related to voter ID. It's not a perfect correlation, right? You just laid out how it's not. But that is another issue closely tied about verifying our elections. A lot of people don't realize this, but we're just about the only country in the world that relies on the honor system to let people vote in our elections. That's absolutely crazy. It's also important to note that this is not just an issue that people care about when it comes to polling. This is an issue that people care about when they have a chance to go to the ballot box. In Wisconsin, y'all may have heard earlier this year, like Pennsylvania, right? You have an activist Supreme Court here. It's difficult to work with. Wisconsin had a Supreme Court election earlier this year as well. It was a statewide race. It became highly politicized, and a leftist was elected to the Supreme Court in a statewide race. The thing that not a lot of people talk about, though, was that on that exact same ballot, the citizens, when they had the chance to vote, voted to put a voter ID law in place. They wanted to verify who was voting in their elections. So this is not just a polling issue. When people have a chance to vote in a non-politicized way, this is something they support. And there were 8 different states that passed only citizens vote or voter ID laws this past fall. It is important that we show Washington that this matters. They seem to be the only ones in the country right now that have not gotten this message. So thank you for coming out. Thanks to Jenny Beth and the Tea Party Patriots. And let's get this done.
Thank you so much, Josh. And now you're going to hear from Marissa Hamilton. She is with a group called Easy AZ for Arizona. She's going to tell you a little bit more about what's happening in Arizona and then go over the calls to action for you.
Thank you so much, Jenny Beth. Look, the rain just started pouring because I'm from Arizona, so it just decided to get triple hard than what it was before. I came here and I was like, Jenny Beth, what is this clear stuff falling from the sky? I'm so unfamiliar with it. Send your rain to Arizona. We need it desperately. Mostly because the radical left keeps trying to use the lack of rain to implement communism in our state with the Green New Deal, and climate change fears. But we're here to talk about the passing the SAVE Act, and it's so critical. You know, some people have said to me, but Marissa, in Arizona, you have documentary proof of citizenship. Why do you need the SAVE Act? Well, Jenny Beth talked a little bit about it, but it gets so much worse once you look under the hood. It's kind of like our documentary proof of citizenship in Arizona is this like big, shiny, beautiful truck that then you look under the hood and everything's like corroded and rusty. And it can't drive because we don't have real documentary proof of citizenship in our state. And we recently discovered that because we fired our terrible Maricopa County recorder last year. A lot of people know about him because of all the terrible things that happened in the 2022 election and the 2020 election. And so we got a new recorder in. And the first thing that I was concerned about is what kind of documentary proof of citizenship do you get? And the answer was, they don't. Instead, what happens is the Motor Vehicle Division system just sends over a digital check mark into the database saying we super swear we got the documentary proof of citizenship. But then the recorders are not actually allowed to look at it. And so the problem that it causes, thank you very much, the problem that causes is you have to rely on the system working perfectly. Well, how many systems do we know that work perfectly? I don't know. Yeah, 0. There's not a single computer system out there that doesn't have glitches. Well, in Arizona, it's almost as if they designed it to glitch. And so the problem that we have is that last year, right before and actually during the 2024 election, it was announced by the Secretary of State that there is a problem in the system, that it was allowing for well over a decade, almost 2 decades, for over 200,000 voters to not be required to show documentary proof of citizenship. Now, they said in the announcement, don't get all conspiracy theorists on us because we are certain that most of these people are citizens. In fact, we think all of them are citizens. Well, the reason why they discovered it is because a non-citizen was able to bypass the MVD system and be registered to vote without documentary proof of citizenship being required. And so I dug into that a little further. We actually had to sue the Secretary of State because he wouldn't release the information. It was pretty wild. He made an accusation saying that if they released the information of the voters that were on this list, and I'm not even exaggerating, the Democrat Secretary of State claimed that our legislature would hire hitmen to go after the voters. Now, this was obviously not a serious accusation, and he then changed his testimony 3 different times, and the judge finally just said, your testimony is completely unreliable, the information must be released. And so since then, now the Attorney General, Chris Mays, has worked overtime to say, no, our opinion is that you can't, if those voters don't actually show their documentary proof of citizenship, you can't downgrade their voter registration record to a federal-only voter. So all of these voters, whether they're citizens or not, are going to be able to stay on our voter rolls with a full ballot. And so it demonstrates why we need the SAVE Act passed, because having a bifurcated system isn't working. Our recorders have been finding non-citizens to vote as they've been asking for proof of citizenship. As President Trump has opened up the SAVE database to make it easier to check for whether a voter is a citizen or not, that will give us a big opportunity to be able to validate our voters. But it's not good enough, because the only way that you can still validate those voters is if you have an identifier that will be able to show up in the system. Well, a lot of these voters that are federal only signed up to vote with no identifier on their voter registration form. And so we're left with a system that's really quite broken, and we need the SAVE Act passed so that we can require documentary proof of citizenship for every one of our voters that gets access to a ballot. And whether it's voting for president or it's voting for our governor, I think that every state agrees they only want citizens to vote. And I hear this even more so with people that became naturalized, that came here the right way and became citizens. They feel like they did the right thing and now they're being cheated out of their rights, and they are. So let's talk about what we can do about it. Well, we need to pass the SAVE Act, and so that's going to require us contacting all of our senators, whether they're on the left or the right. Democrat voters support this issue. 87% of all voters support this issue. And so there's some things that we can do to take action. Number one, if you're here today, you can grab a bumper sticker that says "Only Citizens Vote" and put it on your car, put it on your laptop maybe, and then promote only citizen voting. Number two, we have petitions here. We're not going to DC till next week, so there's still time. So you can take some of these forms with you and maybe go have a ice cream social, maybe go to stand outside the library, go door knocking in your neighborhood. You can also sign up to do text messaging to the people in your phone that you already know that would be interested in signing the petition to pass the SAVE Act. And so for all these calls to action, you can go to demandonlycitizensvote.com. That's demandonlycitizensvote.com and get involved. We want to bring as many of these petitions as possible to the Capitol and make our voices loud and clear that the citizens demand that we pass the SAVE Act. There's so many other things we need to do for election integrity to secure our elections, but this is something simple. This is something that isn't controversial, that pretty much everyone agrees with, and we know that it needs to be done because we've seen firsthand the problems that are caused when it doesn't happen. So thank you so much, Jenny Beth, and thank you for everyone coming here in the rain. Look, it's starting to get a little sunny. I'm bringing the sun. I'm doing my part.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marissa. And it is much cooler here than it was when we were in your state 2 weeks ago. It was like 115 there. So much, much cooler here. All right, so that's your call to action. We need you to take the petitions with you, get your friends, your family, your neighbors to sign these petitions. Once you finish, just take a photo of it and you can email it back to us so we can deliver them next week. And then normally what we do is we go out by the bus and we do like a little chanting and a video there. But with the rain, I don't think we should do that today. It would just get wet. So maybe what we can do is have everyone come stand up here and we can do a photo and we could do a video just underneath the pavilion. And you know what's kind of amazing? We've had amazing weather the entire time. And then we had the rain today, but this is the only time we've had a pavilion. And how perfectly did that work out? That the day we had a pavilion, it rained and everybody was able to stay dry. So thank you for being here and for braving the weather. And let's do